Hello everyone, my name is Pacha and welcome back to a new episode of Tiergarten Edelwald, our European zoo modeled heavily after the Zoo of Schönbrunn in Vienna in Austria. And today it's no different, we are once again building one of the exhibits that you can find in the real Zoo of Schönbrunn if you go there. And that is the so-called South America Park. And if you are watching this series for a little bit longer now, if you follow the series, you notice that there's a lot of parks in this zoo. We have the Giraffe Park, we have the Rhino Park, now we have the South America Park. In the real zoo there's also the Elephant Park and the Crocodile Park. So apparently Austrians love their parks in their zoo. I don't know if there's a special meaning to that, but this is what we go for, and so we are also building the South America Park today. And if you also looked at the title of this video and on the length of the episode itself, you notice that this is once again a two-part video, meaning that we will not completely finish this exhibit in its totality today, but we will continue building on it in next week's video. The reason for that is simple, that it takes too long, there's too much to it to finish it in one episode without cutting out a lot of stuff and making it very much showing you not the full process. And if you know me, you know that I always like to show you the full process, if it isn't any repetitive like placing barriers or things like that. So I decided once again to split this episode into two parts. In this one we are gonna focus on the outside yard, so the main yard that the guests will see, the main South America area, and then in the next week's episode we are gonna focus on the South America house. Technically there are two houses in the exhibit. One we will build in this exhibit, which is the one where the greater Rhea are housed during the nighttime and during colder months. And then we have a second house that you see here on the right side for a short second there. This is actually publicly available, so guests can enter that house, and that is where the stalls are for the capybaras and the giant anteaters, plus another species that is not included in this episode and which we're gonna build for next week's video. So even though next week's video is mainly focused on the house itself, you will still have an exhibit in that video for a totally different species, which is not part of the South America park per se, but which exhibit is connected to the house. So I think this is everything you need to know to understand this video. I mean, probably if you saw that there's a part 1 in the title, you already assumed that there will be a part 2. I just wanted to make clear so everyone is on the same track. But yeah, speaking about the exhibit we are building today here, we are gonna build for 3 different species. This being the greater Rhea, the capybara, and the giant anteater. And before any Eben comes into my video, or any Goron, and tells me you can't do that, you can't mix greater Rhea with capybara and with giant anteater, they live in totally different systems, and this is what all these zoos do. They always mix all the South American animals into one exhibit, even though they are coming from totally different parts of the entire continent. I know that they are not living in the same areas, in the same biomes. The giant anteater and the capybara more so than the greater Rhea, which is more home to the Pampas region and the Patagonia and things like that, more the colder regions also, and the more grassy ones instead of the wetlands. But I just follow what the real Zoo of Schönbrunn houses in here, and even worse, the real zoo also has vicuña in this exhibit, so even one more species that wouldn't really fit with a couple of the others. I decided against it for 2 reasons. First, we don't have vicuña in this game. Second, I thought I would include alpacas, which are the domesticated variant of the vicuña, the same way the llama, or not the llama, the llama is the domesticated variant of the guanaco. I had them in here for a short while by starting this video, but then I decided against it because it didn't feel right. They are not really what I'm looking for a South American herbivore. The vicuña looks a bit different. It's more slender. It's more, it's bigger basically as an alpaca, and so I decided against it. But if you think the alpaca could fit in here, let me know in the comments, and I still can add them in next week's episode. They would also be housed together with the greater Rhea in their own little backstage building, which we will build later. So the main focus of this habitat, because it is a mixed habitat with animals that need to live near the water, the capybara, is this big giant pool that we are building here at the moment, where we are now gonna build the viewing area for the guests, which has underwater viewing because, as you might know, capybaras can dive. They are very proficient divers. So during feeding shows and things like that, the keepers tend to show that behavior. This was also what I saw when I was in the zoo, when I visited the zoo. We were feeding the capybaras and the alpacas and the alpacas, vicuñas and the rheas, and they threw food into the water to encourage the capybaras to show their diving behavior, which was really cool. And it's a rather unique viewing area for a South American exhibit, or in this case a capybara exhibit, to have an underwater view, because it's not the first thing you would think of when you are thinking of South American herbivore exhibits, for example, which are very common and which are very commonly mixed with all sorts of animals from all sorts of regions over the continent. I know even it is heinous. We shouldn't do it anymore, because you also don't mix other animals from different biomes just because they're from the same continent. But I don't know what it is with South America, and that they always mix them. Probably because they get along all together very well, and it's much easier than having multiple exhibits. But anyway, we already talked about that. But yeah, again, underwater viewing here with the glass barriers. So one of the rare times I'm actually using the in-game barriers, apart from, of course, the null barrier, because otherwise we can't do underwater viewings. We need these barriers to stop the water, and it was a little bit finicky also with the path going along that side behind the exhibit. So on the other side of this path is our North American desert section, Mexican and North American desert section, with the trains, the coyotes, and the Bighorn Sheep. So we have this whole American area basically now here, and we are not done. There will be more animals, or one or two more animals that fit into this theme coming into this area, and this also means we now finally fill out more of the big empty spaces between the rhino park and the historic center of the zoo. If you watched the episode about the rhino park, you know that this is a little bit more further away from the rest of the zoo that I have built so far, the historic center as I call it, with the pavilion in the middle. So we have this huge empty space in between, and I wasn't sure, I'm still not sure if that was the best idea, because with building in the zoo more and more, of course, the FPS and everything layer will suffer. It does suffer, and I don't want to end with a zoo that has huge empty spots in the middle. But with this area here, which is one of the biggest habitats we have in the zoo, apart from the rhino park, we finally fill out a big empty spot in this part of the zoo, which makes me very happy, and the FPS are still working. So I'm full of hope that everything will work out. Speaking of zoos, if you haven't watched the last episode, which was this more little special episode because I just came back from a holiday, and the holiday I was on was first of all a few days in my hometown where I was born, to celebrate my birthday, and then my girlfriend gifted me a trip to the city of Stuttgart, which is in the western part of Germany, southwestern part of Germany, and there we went to the Wilhelma. The Wilhelma is the zoo of Stuttgart. It's named after their emperor, I believe, Emperor Wilhelm, or their I think was a king or something like that. I would have to look it up exactly what his title was, if he was a Dutch or or something, or a king, but it was named after him because it was his personal collection first of rare plants. So it was a botanical garden first. And only in the 1950s, 1960s, they started to collect and display animals in there. And not only just animals, but also really rare animals. So the zoo has a really great collection of rare animals like Fanalucas, Oriental storks, and things like that, Dorcas gazelle. So they have a lot of rare animals that you don't usually find in a lot of other zoos, which is super cool. And the one reason, or one of the main reasons we went there, is that they have quokkas. Now, for someone who isn't very deep into the zoo community or into animal collecting, animal trades, animals on the world, basically, who's just here for the game, wouldn't really think about what is so special about quokkas. Yeah, they are from Australia. They're very cute. They have this cute smile. They're very Instagrammable. A lot of influencers show them Instagram because they're so cute. But what is so special about them? Yeah, why would you go to a zoo just because they have quokkas? And to recap a little bit from my last episode, if you haven't watched it, but probably most of you guys know what I'm going about is Stuttgart, or the Wilhelma, is the only zoo in the entire Western world who houses quokkas. There are no quokkas in North America, no quokkas in the rest of Europe, no quokkas in Africa. There is another zoo in Japan, I believe, or somewhere in Asia, who houses quokka, but otherwise you only find them in Australia, and even there they are not super common. They are more common there, of course, but when it comes to zoos outside of Australia, there's only like one or two, maybe three zoos that house them, and one of them, and the only one in the Western world, in the western part of this world, is the Wilhelma in Stuttgart. I will also post a picture, if I don't forget it, about the quokkas here that I made when I was in the zoo. But yeah, it is really special to be able to see these animals, even if you don't care for the quokkas, because they're basically just a rat-sized kangaroo. It is super special to see them because it probably will be the first and only time in my life seeing them. Yeah, something that holds a very special place in my heart, being able to watch them and to see them really active. They were really active because luckily as we went there was a keeper talk going on, so a keeper and feeding talk. So the keeper was feeding them. They have, I think, one male and two females. Could be wrong though, but I would guess that they definitely have three of them, and it was really cool to see them interact, to see them getting fed, to see them interact with the keeper and with the environment. They're not very shy. They're super active. They're getting super close to the glass. They don't really mind the visitors, which is amazing. And yeah, it was also cool to talk with the keeper. I talked with him and talked about him with what their plans are with the quokkas, and he told me once they established a breeding population of them, then they gonna start distributing quokkas to other zoos in the West, so to America and in Europe, to widen the population of them, and that they also spend huge amounts of money each year to support wildlife conservation projects in Australia for the bilby as well as the quokka, to make sure these animals are safe, get the conservation needs they need, basically. And so the zoo spends a lot of money supporting wildlife conservation in Australia, which is super cool. And that's also why they got chosen to house the quokkas and to establish breeding populations in the Western world, which is super cool. But again, it was really nice to see them. Also, the rest of the zoo is also really nice. They have a huge and rare plant collection, but also you have a lot of rare animals there. There are some parts that have been a little bit older, especially the big cat area and the elephant and rhino yards felt very outdated, which was a little bit sad. The big cats really didn't have a lot of space, but other parts of the zoo, like the African area in general, and some of the, especially the mountain area, which was for mountain animals, was super modern, super cool, had really nice viewpoints. And I try, maybe I can incorporate some of these things into this zoo. I already have some ideas in my mind where I could use some of the stuff I saw there for Edelwald, but I have to see how my zoo and the performance in my zoo holds up to that. So I will first focus on the important parts, closing the gap between the Rhino Park and the main part of the zoo, and then if my PC is still going strong with the zoo, I can think about incorporating some of these ideas, which wouldn't be necessary for a complete zoo, but would enhance it basically. But yeah, we are now focusing on the second viewing area, second main viewing area of this park after finishing the underwater viewing, which is this little dock over here, as a little pier, which overlooks, as the zoo calls it, a swamp region, or the swamp area of this exhibit, which has lower water in contrast to the deep lake, basically the deep pond further back. With the underwater viewing, this has more shallow water with more swampy plants, basically lots of reeds we will place here later. And you can get really close to the animals because the only thing separating you is this pier and barrier, which is super cool, that you can get basically a little bit into the exhibit. Another thing is that this is also heavily planted, so you don't see all of the exhibit at once. You have a lot of trees in here, a lot of bushes and hedges, which is super cool, and I try to replicate that because if you're seeing it in real life, it looks very much looks very foliage, looks very lush, and I try to replicate as good as I could, but I think I can do some better things like that. For example, also the entire South America house, which you will build next week, is totally overgrown. You can't even see it from Google Earth. You can't even really see it outlines because there's so much plant life growing on it. So yeah, there's a lot of foliage going on in this part of the zoo, which is the more modern part of the zoo. We left now the historic areas with all the Baroque buildings, all the stucco and all the plaster buildings. But we are now building again with plaster here. But we are now focusing on more modern designs, more modern exhibits for the animals, where we can use the space that we have to give them the space that we need. Before, we had to work with the space that we had in these old exhibits because all of them are listed. We can't really change a lot of them, so we had to work with what we had and make the best out of it. Now in this part we have all the space that we need. We can use as much space as we want to create such a gigantic South American exhibit, for example. Again, now we are focusing on the backstage building for the greater Rhea, one of the newest animals in this exhibit, which came to us through the Americas pack, which was the second last DLC that we got. Then we got the Asia animal pack, and this also serves a second purpose, this building, because it's only a building, but it's also a viewing platform, I would call it. Guests can go up on the roof of it. It's basically a tribune, I would call it in German. It's the same word in Germany, in English, but you can sit on this building on the roof of it and overlook a sea lion show, a sea lion exhibit, which is on the other side behind that, where you of course also have sea lion shows. So this serves as another seating option basically for these sea lion shows, for these keeper talks with sea lions, where they do their tricks and everything like that, which is super cool to make the most out of a building, not only having it being a building, but then you can also use it for a different purpose, for a different exhibit, which I think is super cool, and especially if in an area, because the whole zoo is located in the parks of a castle, you don't have that much area to play with. You have to really think about the space that you have, and you can't just build gigantic areas just for the sake of having all the space and having a gigantic area. So using exhibits or using structures in multiple ways and in multiple different purposes really makes the most out of it. I think is what I want to say about it. But yeah, this is now building the viewing platform over here, which then the guests can go up to. I think in in this people I missed placing the railings on the upper part and the lower parts of the different platforms, basically the different levels. And I think also in the real-time part, and there will not be railings there, but I make sure until the next episode I will include the railings, so no little Timmy falls off that building and breaks a leg. It wouldn't be the best for the zoo if that happens. If an animal bites you, it's your own fault. If you fall down a building or from a roof because there are no railings, the zoo is to blame. So yeah, I have to make sure to include these in that part. But yeah, what are our next plans after the South American area, after South American Park, after next week's building of the indoor building for the animals? We will then shift our focus towards the area directly between the Rhino Park and the Bighorn exhibit. There's so the area that is close to the outer barriers of the zoo itself, and there I have planned 3 exhibits for 3 ungulates. One is from North America, and 2 are from Asia and Africa. I think if nothing changes, then it's Asia and Africa. So there's a lot of diversity coming in that area, and then we have one big middle part, basically similar to the South America park here, which will not be inspired by Tiergarten Schönbrunn. For one of the first times, again, it will not be a direct replica of something that is there in Schönbrunn. In real life, I think it's a pond for waterfowl as well as a reindeer exhibit. But I will change that with an area from a different zoo I got to this year, which is the Zoo of Copenhagen, and I will replicate something from that zoo, which I found really amazing. So that will be a complete different area there with a lot of theming, basically a lot of animals that aren't really that common in European zoos, so also some rare species. Stay tuned for that. I hope everything works out, and I hope I can build it. But yeah, we are now focusing on the big lake. We of course need to have some stairs for the animals to get in. Interestingly enough, in game the greater Rhea can swim and will go into the water. I don't know if real greater Rheas are proficient swimmers, but it's nothing I have ever seen. But I only never really saw a greater Rhea in an exhibit that had the opportunity to swim. But yeah, they can go for a swim basically, which is interesting. And we are also coloring the floor of the pool a little bit darker than the upper parts, and that way we can basically have this little effect that these parts are much deeper than the upper parts, because the color is more darker, it's more muted, and that's why it's like an optical illusion that these parts are deeper than they actually are, basically. But yeah, we're now focusing on all the foliage, starting with all the trees. We have a lot of trees in this exhibit, and from the pictures I saw in the beginning, or when they opened this exhibit, these trees had tree guards around them, they had covers around them, but I also found out that in the beginning they not only had these animals in here, but instead of the vicunias, they had tapirs, South American tapirs, in this exhibit, so which sadly then died due to old age, and then they didn't replace them. So I guess these tree guards were there because of the tapirs to protect them, and since they didn't have any tapirs anymore, they got rid of the tree guards. A similar thing happens to what we did in the beginning. If you look at the viewing area, underwater viewing area, you see the sun covers, these weather covers overlooking the water area that I built with the butterfly netting from the butterfly walkthrough exhibit. And these weren't there when I was visiting the zoo. When I was visiting the zoo, this was a totally uncovered viewing area. So sometime between the construction and opening of this exhibit, because I found pictures with these sunshades. So I didn't invented them; they were there in real life. But sometime between opening the exhibit and me visiting the zoo, which I think is around 9 years or something like that, they for some reason got rid of these sunshades, and I don't know why. If I have no knowledge about why, if someone knows a little bit more about the history of the zoo, he may or has been to the zoo more often. He maybe knows why they got rid of the sunshades. I would be interested to know because can't find a reason why they should get rid of them. They don't hurt anyone. Maybe they got too hot because they're made of metal in the summer. They didn't really provide enough shade or something like that, so they were useless, and that's why they deinstalled them. Anyway, if anyone knows why they don't have these sunshades anymore, let me know in the comments. It would be really interesting to know that. But yeah, we are now focusing on the last part of the exhibit as always, which is the planting and the foliage, so all the rocks and trees, and then all the grasses and things like that. Lots of grass in this exhibit. Interestingly, despite having Vicuña and Greater Rhea, which are both grazers, they have a lot of grass in this exhibit. Other exhibits I saw with these species were pretty barren mostly. So interesting to know that they managed to keep it lush as it is. Also especially with capybaras, there are a lot of animals here that would destroy the grass. So, but still the exhibit is really fresh. So maybe they replant the grass every season. I don't know. But yeah, we are also focusing on that it is a very lush exhibit. And I will also leave you now with the rest of the speed build and some music. And then I will see you in the end time part where we look at the finished exhibit. Alright, we are starting here in our real-time part without any naming this time because we didn't got any name suggestions for the last video. So, but yeah, we get a lot of new animals this time, so a lot of new naming opportunities for you guys. But let's start with our showcase of what we did this episode. And we are starting here on this little, where a lot of roads meet. Behind us we have our Jaguar exhibit, and behind there is the what is it called again? The Ocelot exhibit, exactly, that was his name. In that direction is our lion exhibit from last episode or 2 episodes ago. And now we have this exhibit over here where we can go on this little dock, this little pier, to get a peek into the wetlands section of the zoo. And if we look behind there, we can already see a Rhea coming towards us and a group of capybaras all centering around the main pool there in the front, where we go in a second. I won't go into that direction with the house. There's not much there. It's just the same basically with the barriers, so it's not that interesting. But yeah, let's follow that path here, which is, on the left side is flanked by our North American Mexican area. You can see the train in the background over there. And on this side we now get ever so often we get a little glimpse into the South America park, where we can see all the animals going around having a lot of fun. And then we come to the main viewing area over here, where we can see an anteater swim. Also something I didn't expect it to see, the anteater swim, but hey ho. But yeah, this is the main viewing area over here, where we can see there's nothing in the background, but we can see the exhibit itself in its totality. Maybe we can change the time, to make it look a bit better, especially with the large pool here in front, which we of course can also go down. Is open for access for people with wheelchairs too. And if the animals would swim, deep dive, we could see them down here. The kids especially could see them very well from this perspective, which I think is super cool. But yeah, as I said, next week we focus on this part over there, where there's nothing yet, where there will be the South American house. And again, on this side there's nothing else, nothing really to see over there. And apparently the Rhea swims. I don't know how I feel about that, but anyway. And back there is the backstage building for the Rheas, and would be for the Vicuñas, but we don't have them here. And by that is the seating options for the sea lion show, which we might include in this. So I think if we already build the seating options, we should also include the sea lion show. And I never really built for sea lions, for the California sea lion in this game, so it would be cool to do that. And definitely let me know if you would interested in that, and I try to include it as much as I can. And apparently we have a big swimming party going over here, a nice day at the beach for everyone involved. Everyone is going into the water. It is what it is. Anyway, thank you for watching and for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and then I hope you will be in the next week's episode. Until then, I wish you a great time, stay safe, and bye bye everyone.